We are now live. Good afternoon and welcome to Synopsis ARCAthens Virtual Residency 4. We are going to give you 1 minute to connect and settle in comfortably as we are going to spend approximately 1 hour together. While we admit our guests, please tell us from where you're tuning in. You can answer this on the chat. So it's a little bit early, people are coming in. Settle comfortably, take some water, have a sip. We're going to spend about 1 hour together. See, there's lots of people coming from Athens and New York. So without further ado, I would like to welcome all the people who are tuning in now and welcome them to SynopsisAVR4. I'm Melendez here, independent curator and previous AVR fellow. I'm a white woman with brown hair and brown eyes, and I wear a red top. I will facilitate today's conversation, and I'm happy to be here with ARCAthens, director of ARCAthens, and the fellows, the curator Stamatina, Gregory, and the artists Sofia, Dona, and Groana, Melendez, and also Paola Kamba, who is responsible for social media. Before we begin tonight's program, a few housekeeping notes. This program is recorded and will become available on ARCAthens website soon. We encourage you to keep your camera on and acknowledge the presence of the people in this virtual space. Nevertheless, if you don't feel comfortable, you can turn your camera off. Please mute yourselves when you don't speak. I see some of you are not muted, so please do this. It would be wonderful to have great sound for the people who are going to watch this program later on. You can activate the closed captions by clicking on the CC button at the toolbar at the bottom of your Zoom application. You can leave your comments on Zoom chat. Myself and Paola will get back to you shortly. You can also type your questions in the original chat box, and we will try to address as many as we can during the Q&A at the end of the program. During that time, you can unmute yourselves, or we will read the questions for you, whatever feels good. If you decide to unmute, please start with your name and pronounce, and be mindful of time. We are trying to create a safe space. Please be respectful and cordial to each other. At the end of the Zoom meeting, we will post a survey about the quality of the program. Please tell us what you think. Thank you, and I will now give the floor to Aristides to tell us more about ARCAthens and AVR4.
Thank you, Eleni, and thank you everyone for joining us today for our fourth AVR Synopsis, the culminating event of the ARCAthens virtual residency, a program we started in 2020 as a response to the pandemic and social distancing, and also as an effort for ARCAthens to expand our digital support of artists, curators, and scholars beyond our physical residencies. The concept of the AVR is for ARCAthens to nominate a curator who then researches and selects 2 artists, one in Greece and the other in the Bronx, who then engage in a visual conversation, taking over the ARCAthens Instagram account and taking turns posting images daily, creating a visual and narrative dialogue expressing their concerns during this moment in time. The curator caps the week with an Instagram live curatorial reflection. And all of this is recorded on our website as well under the dedicated page for the AVR4. I'm so excited to introduce you to the curator, Stamatina Gregory, whose residency really began the moment she accepted her nomination, because she had to do some real research, find out about artists in Greece, find out about artists in the Bronx. And after her research, try to pair them up. So her residency is actually even a little longer than the visual art fellows. Stamatina Gregory is a curator and an art historian whose work focuses primarily on the interrelationship of contemporary art and politics. She has taught art history, critical theory, and writing at the New School, the School of Visual Arts, the University of Pennsylvania, the Steinhardt School at New York University, and the Sotheby's Master's Program, where she teaches currently. She has organized exhibitions for institutions including the Cooper Union, Flag Art Foundation, Austrian Cultural Forum, the Institute of Contemporary Art, Philadelphia, and the Santa Monica Museum of Art. Gregory was the curator of New York photographer and activist Brian Wales' retrospective at the ICA Philadelphia, and she was the deputy curator of the inaugural Pavilion of the Bahamas at the 55th Venice Biennale. She's currently the chief curator and director of programs at the Leslie Lohman Museum of Art. Stamatina will be moderating the presentation. And without any further ado, Stamatina.
Thank you, Aristides. Thank you so much for inviting me to take part in this program. Thank you so much to the ARCAthens board and team, Eleni for patiently wrangling us, Paula for all your work. I'm really excited to introduce our two artist fellows. Sofia Dona is an artist and architect. In 2018, she was awarded the City of Munich Prize for Architecture. In 2015, she got a Fulbright scholarship, and she has shown in many and wonderful places, the Municipal Institute of Art and Culture in Tijuana, the Neue Gesellschaft für Bildende Kunst in Berlin, the National Museum of Contemporary Art in Athens, of course. Last year in July, she presented the work Macho Sounds Gender Noise at the Staatsgalerie Stuttgart Museum in collaboration with Daphne Dragona. She also showed at the Kunstpavilion in Innsbruck. And in 2021, this year, she began to join us from the Bauhaus Residency in Dessau, where she was in residence in May. Since 2018, she was curating the Aphrodite Queer Feminist Film Festival in Athens, and that is actually how I happened upon her work. I was really interested in that film festival and what they had done in the past, and I saw that Sofia was involved, and I wanted to dig in and learn more about her work. Our other amazing artist fellow is Groana Melendez, who is a lens-based artist whose work explores hybrid identities through self-representation. So she was raised between New York City and Santo Domingo in Dominican Republic. Her MFA in Advanced Photographic Studies is from Bard. She has participated in many group exhibitions, including one at the Leslie Lohman Museum, where I first came upon her work, an exhibition of queer photography called Daybreak. Currently, she's taking the part in the Triennale at El Museo del Barrio, which is a wonderful show. I don't remember whether it's still up. Groana, you can let us know, but if it is.
Can I just interrupt? This is a show that was co-curated by AVR fellow, ARCAthens Virtual Residency fellow, Elia Alba. Thank you for allowing me to insert that.
Thank you for inserting that, because it's really important to call out the amazing work of past ARCAthens fellows and how we're all kind of interconnected. It will be up until August. Great. Everyone, please go up to the Bronx, see this exhibition, and Groana's installation, photographic installation, is so beautiful. She's also had a number of solo shows, including at the New York Public Library, at CUNY, and at the ICB Bard Studio in Queens, and she lives and works in the Bronx, which is important to this fellowship. So I see that I have 4 minutes to just say a few words to keep us on time. So I'm actually not going to show any of the slides that I had prepared, but that's okay. I just wanted to say briefly that, about my practice and its interrelationship with this fellowship. I've worked as a curator in and outside of institutions for more than 15 years. And while I have particular academic interests, specifically about the relationship of photography to documentation and the document, as a curator, I have many threads of interest and a much more heterogeneous practice. Many of the exhibition and writing projects I've taken on are focused on queer practices, on gender and performance, and also the relationship of the institution to liminal and marginalized communities. I've never done a virtual residency. Then the pandemic hit. We suddenly shifted to doing everything online that we used to do in person, for better or worse. Not only were we doing Pilates and yoga online and having meetings and teaching and starting degrees, I started learning about virtual residencies. And I was like, isn't the whole point of a residency to get you the hell away from your life in order to focus on a project or just find a space to focus in general? But the idea also really appealed to me in a way, not least because although I'm born and based in the US, I do have ties to Greece, and I have not really participated in projects there, although I have participated very deeply with many other intercultural institutions. For example, Austrian Cultural Forum, where I have done many projects, programs, and an exhibition, which is ironically across the street from Onassis Center, where I have never done a single thing. So I was always like, it would be really wonderful to do something with a Greece-based organization or a cultural organization with ties to Greece. Since the first real show that I worked on at the Whitney ISP, I have really made it a commitment to work internationally. I also organized, as Aristides said, the inaugural Pavilion of the Bahamas at the 55th Venice Biennale, and was part of the curatorial team there for a presentation of the work of NYC and NASA-based artist Tavares Strawn. And that work was really about displacement in meaning and categories of national representation, of expectations, of national narratives. And having written about this and many other works by this artist, that work resonated so deeply with me, in part because it probes very deeply and non-authoritatively into nationalist myth and narrative. Right? They say that the things you creatively and professionally work on are always in part still about you. And of course, this idea of trying to disentangle nationalist myths is something that I have even unconsciously always tried to grapple with, because I grew up Greek American, and maybe some people here can relate. To grow up Greek American is to be born into a nationalist myth that you don't even realize that there are alternatives to, maybe ever in your life, until you become involved with contemporary artists. So I really, really welcome this opportunity to have had these conversations with Sofia and Groana to, even though this is a residency in which we're still in our homes, or in Sofia's case, in our other residencies, it really did make a space for us to be able to think, to focus, to say like, okay, what are we sharing? What are these images communicating? How can we reflect on them? And I'm excited to start this conversation. So thank you, and I will hand it over to Sofia.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. I would like to thank from my side also Aristides and Stamatina, Groana, of course, and Eleni, and all of you that you're here. So I also wanted to say that my first response to the online residency was that I have never been in an online residency, so it was a little bit awkward, but still it connected to COVID times. But at the same time, as Stamatina was saying, I was part in another residency that was physically in the Bauhaus building. So in the beginning until the end that I came back to Athens, it made the connections through different areas and cities. And I wanted to say that the structure of this ARCAthens visual residency was very interesting, because it connected like this exchange, and it really worked. Like in the beginning with Groana, we were kind of trying to connect, and then with the reflection, the curatorial reflection from Stamatina, everything came together very, very nicely. And in a way, it broadened up like the way that I think about my work, that I connect to another city, and how many things we share actually with Groana, that her work is so different from my work, but still bringing us together, and having the reflection from Stamatina was altogether like a very important aspect. And I want to say that I really enjoyed the conversations that we had trying to find the thematics. So that was every week. And trying to prepare this presentation, I went back to the themes that we have chosen, writing them down. And there was one of the 4 themes, like it was 4 weeks, that I was forgetting, and it was amnesia. So I couldn't remember one theme. I was like, what was this? What was this? And then I thought, okay, that is not accidental, really. And then I went back to the reflection of Stamatina, talking about everything that is non-accidentally forgotten, like the quotes about like feminism and the waves that it appears and it comes and goes, and all these like political aspects of this part. So I decided, since you have probably been following like the Instagram posts and the conversations that we had, and we posted a lot of our works, I wanted to present today like one work. It's a work that is going to be presented. It's a video that I did, and it is actually produced by ARCAthens. It is made for here and for a project that is a program that is here. It's called Unfortunately It Was Paradise, and it was produced by ARCAthens and AIN. The reason why I present that it's also going to be online. So they asked me to produce a work that is a video essay or an essay that corresponds to 2 movies. So it will be online, and it also has this virtual, how do you produce a work, and what does it mean to have work online and not in a space like real space. Start by sharing my screen and showing you the beginning of this video. It's 34 minutes, and I will say some things shortly, and to connect it also to Groana's work and also to Stamatina's reflection. So it is about amnesia, and it is about reconstructing memories. And it's called Mountains Come First. So I will just share my screen to show this part, and then I will talk a little bit more. And let's hope that everything will work. Because I need to click the share sound, I think. Yeah, it's already clicked. Perfect. Let me know, just in case you don't hear something or you don't see. You can let me know.
Ήταν ερωτημένος με μια κοπέλα που είχαν μεγαλώσει μαζί στο σχολείο μαζί κτλ. Όταν τελειώσανε το τεχνικό σχολείο, αυτός ήταν μηχανικός σε ράπτομηχανές και δουλεύαν τα κρατικά τα εργαστήρια αυτά, που ήταν τετράβραδιες κάθε εξάωρο. Μια φορά αυτός πάει πριν αλλάζει βάρδια και όταν πάει στη μεγαλουργείο βρίσκει την κοπέλα αυτή με τον άλλον που θα άλλαζε. Οπότε όπως την είδε, βλέπει εκεί στο μηχανουργείο, βρίσκει ένα μαχαίρι, πολλές φορές, πάει τη σκοτώνει το πέρα. Μετά φεύγει, τρέχει για να περάσει τα σύνορα και πάει προς την Ιουγκοσλαβία, προς το Μαυροβούνιο. Έκατσε μια εβδομάδα μέσα στα χιόνια, δεν μπορούσε να περάσει. Δεν πάω να παρανοηθώ. Κατεβαίνει μετά από το βόρειο Αλβανίας προς το νότιο που είμαστε εμείς. Κάπου στη μέση Αλβανίας είχε ένα παιδί που είχαν κάνει το στρατό μαζί. Αστυνόμο. Δεν ξέρεις τι έχω κάνει αυτό το πράγμα, να με πάρεις, λέει, να παραδεχθώ. Λέει αυτός τι κάνει, λέει. Έχει ανοίξει η Ελλάδα, έχουν ανοίξει τα σύνορα. Πριν το 90. αυτό. Πήγαινε να τι κάνεις να φύγεις. Φεύγει αυτός έτσι και κάνει και έρθει στην Ελλάδα. Κάποια στιγμή βλέπω ένα παιδί από τη γειτονιά μου, μου λέει, ξέρεις τι, ήρθα από την Ελλάδα, έτσι και έτσι ζει αυτός και ήρθα να φέρω τα ρούχα στη μητέρα του. Γιατί τους είχε μαζέψει η αστυνομία να μην γίνεται βεντέτα και τους φύλαγε. Αλλά άμα πάω Ελλάδα, μου λέει, θα σε πάρω μόνο εσένα. Γιατί τους βοηθάγαμε πολύ, αυτοί ήταν γείτονες εκεί, πεινούσαν και αυτό. Η αδερφή μου τους βοηθάει πάρα πολύ με το μαγαζί που είχε το εστιατόριο. Περνάνε οι μέρες. Πάω στο πρακτορείο να βγάλω εισιτήρια για τους γονείς μου για να πάνε σε ένα γάμο. Συναντώ αυτό. Εσύ, λέει, θα φύγω Ελλάδα, μου λέει, θα έρθεις. Σου είπα μόνο εσένα θα πάρω. Τι να κάνω εγώ. Πουλάω τα εισιτήρια, γιατί ήταν μαύρη αγορά, δεν βρίσκεσαι εύκολα. Πουλάω τα εισιτήρια με κάποια χρήματα παραπάνω. Παίρνω το ποδήλατο, το πάω στον ΟΤΕ που δούλευε ο αδερφός μου. Λέω, θα το δώσω στον αδερφό μου αύριο. Και παίρνω λεωφορείο η άλλη 40.
Actually, I would like to have the image. So, can you hear me? Can you see me at the same time that I share my screen? Yes.
Yes.
Right. Great. So I can share this image. So what is happening here is a good friend of mine and a collaborator, also like a craftsman that we work together in architecture from Albania, Eugene Kapai, who is doing this performance. We organize this performance. He's digging. It's on a beach, a sandy beach in Athens, in Schinias, Attica. And he's constructing with the sand that he takes out of the earth, the mountains that he crossed, migrating from Albania to Greece. So what I think it's interesting, that's why I showed you, like, I mean, in the end of this video, at this point where he's like constructing this mountain and he creates also a hole that he's falling inside, and the mountains cross his height. And they also reach the horizon of between the sea and the sky. In the end, he tries to remember how he crossed. So he kind of goes through rivers. He kind of goes through gorges that he doesn't remember. So as he's capturing these mountains that he created, he reconstructs the memory of this migration. And I just wanted to ask Eleni, how much time is there left for me? Shortly. Is it okay? Can I go on?
Yeah, please do.
Okay. Because I don't see the chat right now. So he reconstructs his memories of this trip. So talking about amnesia, talking about what is this reconstruction of the trip, and also in terms of geography. But at the same time, the decision that I had to put first for you the part of the beginning is because the whole story starts with the femicide, with the murder of a woman. And this is actually why how it came, and he comes in Greece, following this man. So somehow there is a whole, like, even like we can see it like as a funeral happening there, or like a reconstruction of this memory and this trip. That brings us back to what Stamatina was mentioning on her reflection of what is not accidentally forgotten, or I wanted to present this also because of the waves and of this concept, or like this idea of feminism comes in waves, and then it comes and goes. So what I wanted to say is that specific work that is going to be online presented, but in case I will be able to show it in a space like a museum or a gallery space, I would like to have the sound, just his narration in headphones. So it's like a total different thing, like the virtual and the real. What I wanted to say is that this is a reflection to Groana's work, which I found very interesting. She's going to show it, I think. So it's called it's an image from the series El Nombre Mio. The title originates from the poem El Apellido, My Last Name, by Nicolas Guillen, a Cuban poet who worked towards creating a synthesis between ancestries and different cultures. The line loosely translates as my foreign name, which denotes the history of colonization, fractured identities, and selective amnesia relative to African heritage that resulted. So what I wanted to say and connect that and also pass the word to Groana is that Eugene Kapai had, of course, changed his name in order to come to Greece. So I met him like Yorgos Priftis. And when we did this project together, after all these years we worked together, he revealed his real name. And so it was magically connected to what Groana was describing with this work and that you are going to see coming after that. So I wanted somehow in this presentation, not only to present like a work or like the kind of work that I do, but also how this residency, virtual residency, brought all these things together and made a completely different, like in a magical way, I would have to say, connections of everything that I have been working on. So yeah, thank you very much for that time. And I think I stopped sharing my screen, right? And we could go on.
For you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Sofia. Thank you for making that connection as well. I am going to take a bit of a different approach and walk you all through the trajectory of my art practice. Can everyone see my screen okay? Make sure I have the chat up. Great. Cool. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for being here. As Stamatina mentioned, my name is Groana. I'm a lens-based artist, primarily working with photography. In my practice, I'm interested in hybrid identities and what it means to be the product of emigration, specifically as it relates to my own experience. I was born in the United States, but I was raised between New York City and Santo Domingo in the Dominican Republic, where my parents are originally from. So growing up, I felt that I am from both countries, yet at the same time, I didn't fully belong in either one. And because of this internal tension, I became very concerned with who I was and needing to know where I came from. I've been unable to trace my family beyond my grandparents, so I began my art career with the goal of photographing each and every member of my family, kind of as a way of creating a makeshift family tree. In 2005, I started my own ongoing project, Ni Aquí Ni Allá, neither here or there, nor there, where I created portraits of my relatives in New York City and Santo Domingo. It's a series of environmental portraits of my relatives in their homes. So I started by photographing my parents in New York. This is my mother. And this is my father. They live in Washington Heights in Uptown Manhattan, which is also known as Little Dominican Republic. I then expanded my project to photographing my relatives in Santo Domingo. It's a very ambitious project. I have yet to photograph every single member of my family, but the precision of photographing each and every person myself has become less important. And it's been overall about strengthening my connections with them. And at times I was meeting relatives for the first time. This is Doña Marta, who was a neighbor of my grandmother's. And she was kind of also the grandmother figure for the neighborhood. And recently I found out that she is in fact related to my grandmother. So even though I thought this was a stretch adding her in this project, we are in fact related. And this is my aunt, and this is an image I posted for the theme of ritual. A few years in, I transitioned to documenting the spaces themselves. I was looking at the difference between how folks in Dominican Republic kept their homes versus those that emigrated to the US. So looking at the difference between New York City, this is from my mother's apartment. And again, Santo Domingo, my godmother's home. My mother's space versus my aunt's space. I then again expanded my practice to look at family photographs and documents. I became interested in the materiality of documents that define us. The family album also became a way of connecting with relatives that had passed or to those that I didn't have a direct link to. So this is a photograph of my family photo album and the backs of the photographs. I was looking to strip the meaning from the images by photographing the back of the images and looking how this material aged and the marks created by I believe my parents at the back of the images. And this is a detail of my aunt's photo album. You can actually see the binder holes here. Looking at the family album also led me to bookmaking and creating zines. This is a zine where I combined the US and Dominican passports and created my own embossed cover. So this is the US seal and this is from the Dominican passport. The inside cover is the pattern of the United States passport from the 90s. And then inside the spreads are cropped images from my family photos. And this is a detail from that same zine, which I posted for the theme of amnesia. So with all my work, I was looking to talk about these huge concepts that weren't coming out in just a photograph. I was interested in fraught relationships, what it means to be an insider, outsider, ideas of classism and racism, really big concepts that were pretty overwhelming to work with. And that led me to working with video. This is a still from a video I posted for the theme of balance. Here I'm trying to connect two magnets at their same poles, which is impossible. And I created it out of a frustration around communication and tense relationships, specifically with my mother, and like old conversations of tensions between the Dominican Republic and Haiti. It all culminated into this one frustrating action. This is a still I also posted for the theme of balance. It's a performative piece where I chugged a glass of water while an audio phone conversation is playing over it, of a forced conversation with my mother. So throughout a lot of my video work, I explore the feeling of in-betweenness and complicated relationships. And it's also allowed me to be a lot more playful. And that is it for me. Thank you.
Thank you both. It's really nice after like we've had some really deep exchanges, but one thing that I did notice about the structure of this residency meant that we touched on like a lot of images and topics very briefly. And I kept thinking like, okay, hopefully now this final conversation will be like the time that we can dive in really deeply to like one or more of them. So Sofia, I appreciate you kind of looking at that one work. And Groana, every time I look at one of your images, I feel like there's just more and more there the longer that you look, even if it appears to be something simple, like one of your tias sitting on a couch, or like the, you know, the Holy Family themed plate that then became like the plate with like the insignia of the Dominican Republic. So one of the things that I really wanted to make sure that we got into in this conversation, since we do have limited time, is the theme of amnesia, because I feel like that was one of our most kind of productive and really like resonates with things that are happening today, and also is kind of like an idea that was maybe like latent in your practices all along in a way, as you know, as is the nature of amnesia itself, right? And so I thought maybe the two of you could address it in your own way. I know that Sofia, you just spoke about that particular video, but this idea of like cultural or colonial amnesia being something that is both a survival mechanism culturally from your, you know, both your respective subjective positions and those of the folks around you, and also something that then becomes a motivating factor for your work, or a space to construct, or a space to analyze, to kind of think about this in a kind of methodological way. Maybe you each want to spend a little bit more time there. And either one of you can go first. Groana, maybe you want to start since you were just speaking.
Sure. So just overall speaking about this theme of amnesia in my work, pretty much. Yeah, how do I say this? I think along with not being able to pinpoint a lot of my family history, what I started learning was that there was a lot of secrets, and it was kind of a way of survival. With this idea of making this family album, I found out that like in a lot of Caribbean countries, my grandparents had multiple families. So I think also this collective amnesia of the family became like a survival tactic. But it's come down to me now where I'm frustrating and I'm trying to like find answers. And that's really what motivates me for my work. Is that helpful?
How do you think that amnesia like has functioned culturally? And how does that kind of come out in your work? Because I mean, I love the way in which your photographs kind of reveal what might inadvertently be hidden, or maybe not inadvertently, maybe purposefully.
Right.
I can also, and here's the thing that's nice about us being in conversation mode now, I can also share screen to our images.
That would be great.
And that it's always easier to like speak through an image, right? Rather than to speak in abstractions. Let me just pull this up. Oops. The issue is I have 1,000 tabs up. Please give me another moment. Let's try and share desktop too. Can everyone see my desktop?
No, no,
Yes?
no screen sharing.
No screen sharing. Huh. Share. Can you see my desktop now?
Yes, you can see your
Okay,
Instagram page.
So this is the ARCAthens Instagram page. Here's one. The childhood bedroom.
So connecting this to amnesia as a collective?
Yeah, well, or like, you know, in your works, or even in one that has a lot of the kind of images of the frames in it, like which, let's see. This one is very kind of easy to like connect to the idea of cultural amnesia, right? Because like you kind of like present something here that is essentially something where things are like purposefully obscured, right? And like I've been looking at this image a lot actually, because this is part of our upcoming exhibition at Leslie Lohman, an exhibition called Chosen, which is about chosen families. And so this is Groana's contribution to that work, which is also interesting because every single other image there is about like viewing and representing and responding and kind of giving a face and a figure to like the phenomenon of being able to like choose your own family from a queer perspective, right? And this one is kind of like an acknowledgement and a refusal that things are so easy, right? How can you choose your family if maybe you have never being given an opportunity to not choose your family, right? Like what is like then the landscape of this choice? What does this choice come out of? And and especially the kind of cutouts of those images. You know, this idea that amnesia is somehow becomes then a tool, like a survival tool, as opposed to something that happens like inadvertently. I think that's so interesting in this particular image. And also there are kind of more inadvertent ways of looking at this through your work, right? And now I, of course, cannot find the image that I'm thinking of. Yeah, but there are also the image that you just showed too, which was like the kind of almost cluttered tabletop with all of the framed pictures, right? And this kind of like, the framing is a choice. You choose who you want to look at every day, but it's also a kind of like symbol of accumulation, right? And this accumulated thing is not always intentional, right? There, it becomes like a palimpsest of objects, of layers.
Right. I find that something that I'm constantly fighting with my relatives is like how they want to present themselves, and like just like when we all look at our photo albums, it's like specific moments and like smiling and looking directly at the camera. But I was fighting trying to hold on to my own memories. Whether like, why are there no photographs of bedrooms? Like this room that had such a big importance to me. This should be documented. And that's kind of what I do through my work as well. Pinpointing the things that are pretty significant in everyday life, but that we don't typically hold on to.
So in your way, it's also a kind of like building against, or kind of shoring up, or like creating the archive that you want.
Correct. Yes.
When the archive is not visible.
Creating the archive that I want. Yes.
I feel like we can talk about amnesia everywhere in all of these images, especially this Taino print that we have here. You know, this idea of amnesia that becomes like a kind of like cultural nationalization, which I think is so important. But I want to move on to Sofia also, and you know, think about, I guess my question initially was cultural amnesia as, you know, both a tool, like both a cultural phenomenon and also a methodology to work against. Maybe
I can talk a little bit about the work that I showed, and maybe I can also talk about architecture, because this is something, in my background as an architect, you know, the buildings that stay and what do they represent and what kind of history do they carry, and somehow the site-specific work that I do. But what I wanted to say for the work that I showed about like this concept of a survival mechanism, as you described it, Stamatina. Something that I didn't say about this video is that Eugene comes to Greece, he kind of exactly forgets, but there's some part that he puts this narration actually. What he told me is that the way that he did the performance, it was quite therapeutic, and that it helped him bring this back. But in the meantime, as he narrates the story, he says that one of the jobs that he did in Athens, as he came in Athens, is to put together like the negatives of films, to have the first projections of very famous Greek directors, even Angelopoulos. So he was working, like putting together, making the first film projection for them to see, and then to change and reconstruct or something. And one of the directors, Yanari, is asking to give his voice in one of the films, just the voice. And he was actually dubbing dubbing, I think it's the right word, an illegal Albanian migrant crossing the border. So imagine like in the middle of his trip, he's coming from Albania to Corfu, he spends time in a cave, and then he comes to Athens, and then, you know, he has to do all this, and he has to like play again the role with the dubbing voice of a migrant that crosses the borders and is illegal. It's in Albanian because they needed an Albanian, you know, language. And at the same time, he also, in the movie, they are these migrants that cross, and then they save a woman from a rape that is happening at that moment. So again, like going from the beginning of the narration with this woman's murder to the middle of this film. So everything kind of, I was thinking, and to the end that again, he tries to reconstruct this part. So I was thinking about this culturally, you know, that you have a film, a Greek film, very strong. If you have seen, it's called Αυτή η νύχτα μένει, this night stays. Talking about that in a very strong way, but at the same time, like using, you know, the voice of one migrant that works on this project. So I wanted to, yeah, somehow say that in my work, I start with, I'm very interested, like revealing stories, like, or narrations. Even it starts with a very personal, like, connection with people. But there are also other times, like maybe I can talk a little bit about the Elephant Hotel, the balcony, the work, their balcony, that we are talking now about the collective memory. It's a building that it's in Weimar. It's a building that was very famous because it was used a lot by Goethe and Schiller. And then it was the Bauhaus people that were frequently going to this hotel, Elephant Hotel. And it's also part of a book of Thomas Mann, Lotte in Weimar, which is very interesting because he puts again Goethe and Lotte to meet when they are 70 and actually deconstructs the whole myth of Werther. So all this history is there. So when I went to Weimar, I was like, I want to go to this building. And then I found out that this building was demolished and was reconstructed by Hitler, adding this central balcony, and then it became quite known because
let me find this for a minute.
Yeah.
This was later.
I think it's in the.
I'm going to share my screen
staged,
again.
Maybe staged.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm not in Amnesia. I don't know if I put it on.
That's okay. Staged.
Yeah,
we were going to talk about stage next, so it's perfect.
Yeah.
Can everyone see?
Yeah, so here you see the Hotel Elephant. You cannot see, maybe the second image is a little bit more representative, but here you can see like the two balconies, because the third one, Stamatina, I'm sorry if you can go through the. Yeah, so there is this building that's being demolished, reconstructed by Adolf Hitler, and this central bulk in the building that it was quite, like he was making his speeches. So it was like this power, you know, architectural element that has this power and symbolism. So what I did is that I constructed this second balcony that you see on the right of and this is out of styrofoam. It's just like a mock-up. It's like light, but it's exactly identical to the other one. And then it's a very architectural gesture. So to act on a facade of a building and somehow try to destroy or move a bit, because what's happening here is the copy of a balcony. Nobody really can see it because it's made in the exact same way. And so people couldn't really tell, but then you slightly see that there is a weird balcony there on the facade, and it's not keeping the symmetry. And somehow what I want to say is like to try through this work, this installation, like a very architectural installation. It was in the beginning of my studies in fine arts and after I finished architecture, that tries to recall or like to talk about collective memory about architecture in the city, and also about, you know, to do it not in a very direct way, to do it in an indirect way, to try to build, maybe we can say, we use the word build up something and talk about this. And then, of course, after a while, because it was just a mock-up, it went, you know, they had to deinstall it. So, and this is a cultural monument, which is also very interesting because I couldn't like drill, I had to find a way to fix it that was very ephemeral. That was also part of the work. So somehow, yeah, what I'm trying to say that my methodology has to do with a lot of how to also site specificity that talks about specific either like historical incidents or like narrate stories, and somehow I think space, even with the mountains come first, the recreation, you know, of like the mountains is talking about yeah, and of course like the video and the story that I narrated about the film or the voice of the language questions all what you are saying, Stamatina, about like what is the survival mechanism of this? Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to ask the next question, and then since you started moving through these ideas of space and of staged, which was our third theme, you know, because both of your practices are very architectural. Obviously, Sofia, you are a trained architect, and that you know, that really informs your work. And also, Groana, your work is so concerned with like how spaces shape us, and how you know, even though we can like speak about a kind of like cultural displacement and the displacement that happens with migration, it always takes place in these enclosures that are so intimate you can almost feel them, and they feel simultaneously both kind of comfortable and completely restricted. Right? And so like space informs both of your works, and in some places it's like a window, some places it feels like a portal. And you know, thinking about those methods too, and this idea of like the stage, you have very different approaches. Groana, your most of your photographs, some of your photographs are a document, right? They are the kind of archive that you want for yourself, but some of them are specifically staged. Your Tia is very poised on that couch. You know, there's a kind of way in which you're constructing the environment. And Sofia, also like what you just touched on, but also thinking about, you know, some of your kind of more less subtle, more explicit architectural interventions, like how you open one space into another. Maybe you can both kind of touch on that.
I think I can start. It's interesting. I think also the format that I photograph in lends itself to a feeling of stagedness. I stay clear of completely directing people when I photograph them, but I use a medium format camera and I'm on a tripod. So I really have to be mindful about where I'm placing my camera and how I will photograph. And then my relatives place themselves and present themselves how they want to be presented. But I'm very much interested in how they stage their own spaces, how they create their own homes, what are some of the like decorative aspects of their homes. And I think that concern also came from, I found that my mother and a few of her brothers and sisters that live in New York City, they have a bit of hoardish tendencies, having packing too much in their homes. And I saw that as a form of my relatives in the Dominican Republic had very staged homes in that kind of way.
Let's see if there's another image. Oh, here's the, oops. This is maybe one of the ones I was looking for too, but it was.
Yes, this is probably one of the only images you'll find in my family album of a bedroom. And also a little sacrilegious because it's my grandmother's altar in the background. But yeah, really looking at how she decided to create this sacred space for herself as well.
In the structure of the space here, says so much, right? It's like the kind of like corner icon situation. Are those like photo escultura in the background?
I'm not sure what escultura.
Oh, it's like that may be, I don't know if that's specifically like a Dominican tradition, although it's found in other countries of Latin America where like the photograph is like half sculptural, half photograph.
There were some of those, yes.
Altars, yeah, okay. And so there's a kind of interplay of image and materiality even in those objects, which then becomes like a meta approach through this image. And then the obscured face, I think, is so incredibly telling here because it's about like, in some way, like the objects speaking, but it also can be interpreted as like, she could be just wiping her face, or it could also be like a kind of supplicant gesture, or it's kind of like a religious gesture. And so that, particular image in which she appears to be in motion, which is actually so rare in your images too, because everything is kind of like still and, like as if it hasn't moved for like hours or weeks or months or days. I found this was like a kind of interesting punctum among your work in terms of like things being staged and things being unstaged simultaneously.
Thank you for pointing that out, specifically about the movement. But then also looking at like at the tchotchkes, like there is a sculpture of a dog on the bureau, and it's like, why? Yeah, a lot of these choices are really interesting to me.
Okay, and Sofia, your approach is obviously very different, but through this kind of, not only are you kind of architecturally creating spaces that then become a stage, but you're also, I know that I'm changing the question from before, but now that I'm looking at the images, I have like so many more ideas, and we could do this all day. I actually wanted you to speak a little bit about, instead, when we talk about staged, because I wanted to know more, both of these kind of like protest collective gathering images that you posted, because in this case, in your practice, it wasn't about creating the stage, but also like observing a kind of theater, right? Observing how the public space responds to its own architecture and like houses actors within it, and how and why in a particular moment. And then one of them was this image, the preacher that every day is in front of the fountain at Sindagma and is drowned out. And then, and then like folks come and put an end to it. And then there's this one, Pray for Tsipras, which was so interesting to me because I was like, really? Like a group of folks from the Nigerian community actually came together to pray for Tsipras, who was then the prime minister, kind of in the midst of the fiscal crisis in Greece. So I'm changing my question, and I want you to speak to those moments of theater that you then like posted and documented.
So yeah, as you said, like there is one part of my work that I also love location scouting, and I love to find places and stage things. But then there is another part that has to do like with capturing what is out there. And actually, it's very interesting that both of the works that you show, it's the same time. So there are a lot of things happening in Athens, and a lot of things now Kypseli changed so much also. But that was what is really interesting, because we are now in like 2021, about 1821, the Greek Revolution. And it's that if you go to the first image, you can see there is like the gospel, the Nigerian community and the gospel festival. They are in front of Canaris, who is like a Greek hero of the revolution. So you have like a lot of elements, and they are asking the people. So they do this festival, and they are asking everybody to pray for the prime minister, who is like a left wing, or of course things changed a lot. But back then he was just elected. So they, so I went to find these people to the place that they were having their church. And the next step was that there was this building in Omonia Square, Central Square in Athens, that had on the first 2 floors, it was the Apostolic Church Greek. On the second floor, it was the Nigerian. On the third floor, it was the Arabic, but it was all like the same church. But you could, changing floors, you could immediately like change completely also like the culture. So I went to, and the way of performing religion, how open its community was. In the same building, there was like one hairdressers that was like also a cruising, like if I can say, space, and another flat that was given to refugees, hosting refugees that came here and needed that. So there was like this building suddenly that I came across that was all these different elements. And for this specific work that we see here, like so there was, what I want to say is that there was another kind of stage, like it was also like put into like different floors of the building, of typical building, office building in Omonia. Yeah, the question that I made to this group was like, if it was any kind of prime minister, would it be the same to pray for them? If it was Golden Dawn, for instance, you know? And they said yes, because it's like the Bible saying that. So I was like trying to have this discussion about that. You know, they were really nice people, of course, and very open. And there was this kind of like, you know, connection between like law and politics and religion and everything, like so confused. And again, praying, you know, like a public, praying in public somehow, or asking for praying in public for like a prime minister. So all of these things that revealed, I think it's very nice that you saw that, because it connects a lot with the the complexity and the beautiful elements that the Groana's work has, as she was saying, what is this dog doing there? What is this? You know, like all these things that you're like, okay, it's Canaries in the back and this Nigerian group, and then it's in Kypsel, it changed so much now. And yeah, on the other hand, there is this preacher, of course, that he's not allowed to preach, that I started, I told him I would like to come to, I think it's a little bit further up, if you go a little bit further up, if I'm not mistaken, I saw it there. Yeah, so I told him I would like to come where you preach. He said, we don't have much time because the police always arrive and they kicked me out. But he always chooses the fountain, you know. He said, I go to the fountain of Syntagma. And you have, of course, in the back, you have the building of Otto, like the Bavarian king that became the Greek parliament. That is the fountain of Syntagma. We are in a period like of crisis, you know, 2015, and everything is so much different, of course, changed. But at the same time, he decides to go where his voice is being not muted, but overlapped by this sound of the prosperity, let's say, like a fountain that is in a public space. And you have like this, again, public preaching that is covered by the architecture and the elements of the city. And somehow in the end, what's happening in this video, it's a video actually, is that there are these people that go on to make a picture with the parliament, you know? So there is this group of, it's a family that they gather together behind him and they make a picture together. Somehow it also talks, you know, about this time of, like it's a very touristic place. Yeah, and I think they are two very good examples to talk about that.
So I'm going to stop sharing for the moment, and I think it's a good time to open this up to the audience, since we're at a few minutes after 1. We've been together for an hour, and I actually haven't looked at the chat. Oh, okay. Q&A is approaching.
Stamatina, if you allow me, I think that was a wonderful conversation and I felt hypnotized. I think Irini Linardaki has one question for Sofia Dona. It came at the beginning of the conversation and was saying he walked through the mountains. So I see that Irini is here. It's always very communicative. So if you want to unmute yourself, Irini.
Hello. So when you were going through, hello, I'm Irini Linardaki. I remember to say my name. When you were talking about your friend's journey through Albania, you said, you know, he was digging. Did he walk through the mountains?
Yeah, you mean the original journey is he walked through the mountains. Yeah, so he reconstructs
Yeah,
the mountains that he walked through the mountain. Yeah, he walked 3 days and without food.
So there
and,
is a,
yeah, meeting people
yeah,
on
it's
the way.
very, sorry. It sounds, I just understood that I was texting, but not at the right text. I find it very interesting because exactly because you're describing a trajectory where he walked. Okay, because there is, through what you two said, both of you, there was, for me all the time, a perspective, an interior journey and trajectory. All the time, there was like a very interesting juxtaposition on locality, you know, when you were talking about specificity of place, and several times though there were a lot of approaches on interior journeys, you know, like it was somebody's journey, you know, a lot of times in the past in both your works. I find, and even at the last one at Platia Canari, there was even there, you know, yeah, I think that was interesting. I can't, you know, because so I just listened to both of you and it was so interesting, but I can't like, but that's what I see in both your works. And I will mute myself again.
Maybe I will just, Irina, I will just say something about, because you said he walked through the mountains, and the title of this work is Mountains Come First, and it's from Brodel's Mesoios, the Mediterranean, this book that actually says that mountains, because there wasn't agriculture, there are the geographical spots that are not having been documented in history so much. So there is this historical aspect that is missing, like how to document, like, and at the same time I use it because, of course, Brodel says that the Mediterranean is like surrounded by mountains and the sea, Mediterranean Sea. But at the same time, there is this part of history that is missing because it was not like, there was no agriculture, there was not so many villages, there was not like, so somehow he also forgets this crossing, yeah, while he walks, and he tries to reconstruct in this video. Yeah.
What I mean is like there is you see there is this idea of trajectory and interior journey because he's changing his life through this trajectory, right? And the memory is almost like the memory of a performance, and then you have him, the performance, basically, you know. And with Groana's work, you know, you have the passports, you have the entire families, memories, you know, their trajectories, you know. Anyway, I find it interesting as a common point, and I'm done. I will mute myself. Groana.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I think where I started with my practice was looking at my parents' trajectory from DR to the US, and in the ways that shaped them. And I really loved, Sofia, how you made the parallel connection with that piece. It's incredible. So thank you.
Any other lingering question? I cannot see any comment or question coming in from the chat, but you can still unmute yourselves and you still have a chance to our fellows.
Otherwise, you'll have to DM them if you have a question after this.
I'd be just interested to hear if any of the three fellows would like to share if they have any upcoming plans or events that they want to share with us. No pressure.
I can start by saying that the residency I had in the Bauhaus Master Houses in Dessau was also to have a solo exhibition there. And it didn't happen because of COVID. I mean, it is there, but it hasn't opened yet. So it's going to open on the 8th of July. And it is about, actually, we didn't talk at all about this work, but it's called Gamekeepers, and it's about hunters. animals, and actually hunters that they're hired by the state of Germany to hunt specific animals to keep the balance of nature. It was like a very interesting, subject theme for me to work, and then this is how it brought also the discussion of balance. So that will be in the 8th of July, and I'm very happy to go back and open this work in the Master House of Walter Gropius. Yeah.
Yeah, as Stamatina mentioned, my work is currently up at El Museo del Barrio, which is in El Barrio in Manhattan. Really beautiful space. You can also take it as an excuse to visit Central Park right after. And also, as Stamatina mentioned, the family album image is part of the print sale and exhibition collaboration between Trunk Editions and Leslie Lohman, which maybe something that you can speak more about.
Yeah, the exhibition is also, it's an exhibition and at Leslie Lohman, and it's also a print sale that is available on the website. So this is a way that we are approaching making things, images by queer photographers available at like multiple collecting levels, and the images are so beautiful. Groana's is there. There are also 7 different artists that are like reflecting on the theme of queer kinship and chosen families. And so those those images will be up in rotation. It started yesterday and going through mid-July. And also probably find the website if I take a minute. And yeah, at Leslie Lohman, we actually coming up at the museum, we are opening an exhibition by the curator and activist Abram Finkelstein called Omniscient. And we really just wound up a year and a half of COVID programming. And so the pandemic gave us an opportunity, much like this one, to think about, how we can come together in a different kind of space, how we can also make programs more accessible in the future. And we recently, just last week, finished a performance series that I organized called Remote Intimacies, where artists, through screening or through intimate performance and through a talk back afterward, we're like, able to connect in a way that, to reflect on the medium of Zoom and to think about constructing a space that brings us into a kind of deeper connection in a different way than speaking about art in a Zoom forum. And I am currently working on the publication that kind of examines that series. And so I'm happy to be able to keep you all informed of that, ARCAthens folks.
I have a quick question. I don't know if you can hear me. It's for Sofia.
Hello.
There you are.
I cannot see your name. Okay.
I'm Carol. I'm
Hi,
Carol in the Bronx, and I just was wondering whether your Gameskeeper's work would have a presence online. I was very intrigued by it.
I mean, I have a website, so and there is going to be like a video that documents the show. What is really a pity is that, again, I worked very site-specific, in this very site-specific way. So the building is like Gropius reconstructed master house that was bombed. And somehow I use the windows as light boxes for big prints, and the whole space changes with the light. So it's always hard to capture, something that works this way. So I'm always like very excited when I'm being there, and then I'm wondering how to have the documentation. But it will be for sure like online on my website and also on the Bauhaus Dessau Residency website. But there are one person that does a video documentation, and another person that does the photo shooting in July. So yeah, you will be able to see that.
Okay, thank you.
So our program will soon come to an end. Thank you all for this wonderful conversation. If you enjoyed the program, please fill out the survey you will find on the chat. And I was wondering if there's any lingering question or final comment from our fellows. And also if Aristides wants to make an update about the upcoming events of ARCAthens.
Sure. I just want to thank everybody for joining us today, and especially the fellows, Stamatina, Groana, and Sofia, for a wonderful residency and this very engaging synopsis. It's been a pleasure to see your dialogue blossom. I love how seemingly different the artists were, and yet how many commonalities they were able to find and mine and explore, and have all sorts of relationships blossom from that. So that's really interesting, and I thank you for that. Thank you, Eleni Riga and Paula Kamba, for helping with this presentation, our board of directors, of course, everybody on the team without whose passionate support or programming would not be possible. I'd like to take a moment here and remember our founding president, Bill Fagley, who passed from us recently. Bill was a light that continues to shine bright within all of us at ARCAthens, and we march onward as he would have wanted. And looking forward, AVR5 is in its design stages, as is our mentorship program for the fall. Also, in an exciting and major shift forward for us, we're planning to release our first call for applications in September for our physical program in Athens for the year of September 22. We've been working hard on this, and we will likely ask you to help us spread the word. It's a pretty significant step for us, but it's something we've been wanting to do since our founding days. And we're just so pleased that we're reaching the capacity of being able to present our doors, open our doors to anybody who might be interested to apply. If you're not on our mailing list, please visit our website at arcathens.org to join. And while you're there, please visit our website support page to make an easy, safe, and tax-deductible gift to make sure we can continue our programs. So thank you again to our fellows, our team, and thank you all for supporting us. Have a wonderful and safe summer.
Thank you, Aristides. Stamatina, Sofia, or Groana, is there any final comments?
I just want to say thank you. This has been a great opportunity, a wonderful headspace to be in, and thank you so much, especially to Sofia and Groana, for your work and your sharing your practice and your thinking, and to Groana especially for hanging out with Greek Soma. You get an extra star.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you. Thank you, Aristides. Thank you, Stamatina. Thank you, Sofia. It's been such a pleasure. And thank you, Eleni, for taking such good care of us and keeping us on track.
I want to say that I really want to meet you all physically, so from close. So I really wish this will happen, because it's so nice, and I'm sure that we will meet somehow in the same space. Yeah. So thank you for the invitation and everything. And yeah, I'm sure. I mean, we're going to meet with Aristides soon, and I'm happy for that. But still, it would be wonderful if we can continue this conversation from close. Yeah.
It'll happen. I'm confident.
I'm working on it, and
Right.
I don't want to jinx it, but there is interest in gathering all our alumni together. If we can get the proper funding to make that happen and accompany it with an exhibition, as we're discussing, but this is going to be a big project, as you can imagine. So we're looking for 2 to 3 years from now for this to actually happen. But it's in the works. Just keep throwing us your blessings.
Well, I take your word for this, and I'm already 3 years ahead. So if there's no other lingering questions or comments, our program has come to an end. Thank you all for being here today. Thank you, Aristide, for all your hard work and your support to the artistic community. Thanks to everyone at ARCAthens. You are all doing an amazing job. Thank you, Groana, Sofia, and Stamatina for keeping us wonderful company for the last 4 weeks, and especially tonight. I'm mesmerized. I sometimes forgot what I was here for, facilitate your conversation, because it was so interesting. Thank you, Paula, for joining this effort and helping me so much. And of course, thank you all for being here with us. It was a pleasure to see some friendly faces. Hope next time we'll have more cameras on. So meanwhile, please fill out the survey after the program so we can do better in the future. And now we will unmute you so we can all say goodbye to each other. Paula?
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Καληνύχτα. Φιλάκια.
Καληνύχτα.